Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalks.Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events. This is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, there is a link in the description. So go there in the description, click on this link, and you'll see all the events we have in the pipeline. We don't have yet a podcast event and interview for the next Friday, but we will add this soon. So keep an eye. And the best way for keeping an eye on the content we have on this channel is, of course, subscribing it to this channel. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now it's the best time to do this. And we have an amazing Slack community. So if you haven't joined it yet, join it to talk to other data enthusiasts. During today's interview, you can ask any question you want. So there is a link in the live chat. So it's pinned. Click on this link, ask your question, and I will be covering these questions during the interview. And with that, I think the intro is over. And I just want to make sure that I pronounce your name correctly before we start. It's Supreet. Supreet, okay. It's always interesting when with international environments, like how to pronounce the name correctly. So just 1 second. Okay, so I think I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so this week we'll talk about responsible and explainable AI. And we have a special guest today, Supreet. Supreet is an assistant VP in data strategy at Morgan Stanley, yeah. And yeah, so she's also the founder of DataBuzz. So you'll probably tell us a bit about that, what it is. She's a writer, she's a speaker, and she loves communicating what she knows on different platforms. So it's my pleasure to have you today. Hi.
Hello, thank you for having me on the show.
So before we go into our main topic of explainable and responsible AI, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Sure. So in 2017, I came to state to pursue my master's. I'm originally from India, the capital city. I started my master's of business and science. It's a combination of MBA and MS in data science, a very unique degree. And then I started my career in Jan 2019 as a data science consultant. I was a data science and technology consultant for 3 years before I decided to switch gears a little bit and be more involved in the data strategy as I realized the importance of that in my early career years. After these few years of chatting with so many ambitious people who want to pivot in this technology and data science, I realized that there was something that I could do out there, help everyone, and hence I started the community, DataBuzz, to mentor people who want to pivot in this field. I've had a very unique career journey, I would say, from a non-traditional, non-engineering background, pivoting in this field, and that's what's goal of DataBuzz.
Well, that's interesting. We will probably spend a bit more time about that. I'm quite curious to know more about this. But I'm also interested in your title. So your title is Assistant VP in Data Strategy. So I'm really curious, what does it mean? What do you do in your day-to-day job?
Yeah, of course. So Morgan Stanley is definitely a big firm. We have different divisions. We have asset management, investment banking, wealth management. I'm in the analytics and data team for wealth management and data strategy and products. Our team basically owns different AI-driven products. We are the product owners, ensuring that the data strategy is streamlined, introducing new data ideas into the stream, and obviously creating different AI products, helping launch different AI products in Morgan Stanley. So yeah, we work very closely with data science to make everything happen.
So you're more on analytical side of the data.
Product and the analyticals.
And so yeah, the topic today is responsible AI. So what is responsible AI? So how can AI be responsible?
Yeah, definitely, it's a very interesting field. and it's a very budding field, I would say. So I've been in this regulated environment. I was in healthcare, and I'm in finance for 3+ years now. So I have definitely appreciated responsible AI and trustworthy AI. And as the name suggests, it's all about developing algorithms and process so that you can empower your employee and end users or customers, right? So there have been numerous, I would say, studies out there which say that your consumers and customers, if they trust you with the outcome, they'll invest in you. It's as simple as that. So it's basically a collaborative way of working with other stakeholders, with keeping your end users informed and be able to integrate everyone's feedback, ultimately making this a very collaborative process.
Well, what does it actually mean? So does it mean that if they trust us, then we are kind of responsible because we don't want to violate this trust, or what does it mean to be responsible here? Like, we're responsible for data, for the decision that our machine learning and AI systems make, right? So, and we don't want to lose this trust that people put in us, right?
Exactly. And you basically have the right tools in place, right? So that all your stakeholders and users are feeling confident about the decision. So if anyone asks you, like, how did you arrive at this outcome? You have some tool. You have something to show them. Okay, this is the step. This is what my algorithm followed. And we were able to derive at this decision. So I would say it's a set of tools and frameworks to empower you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to think of an example. I don't know, maybe can you use some example from your work, or maybe something that you can talk about that where this is important. So you said that we want to explain, right? So we want to feel confident in these predictions. So we want to explain how they happen. So we have this trust. So can you give an example?
Of course. So a few months back, an article that came out, and that there was a husband and a wife. Both of them were eligible for a credit card with the same limit, but the wife ended up receiving a lower limit than the husband. And it was a big lawsuit against the company because she felt that somewhere AI was biased towards her just because she was a female, and maybe the algorithm ultimately assumed that she had a lower income and gave her a lower limit credit card. So this is where if you have the process in place, you are able to justify why wife got that limit and why the husband got a certain limit. And even before that, you are able to check, did your data actually have bias in it? And you can curb that so that you can produce a fair decision. So there are two sides of the coin, I would say. First is your data side, definitely, which you have to check in terms of accuracy and fairness. And then is your model predictions, because if your data is biased, no way that you're going to get unbiased predictions. So.
What is the relationship between responsible AI and explainable AI? Because from what I hear now is, if we want to feel confident in the predictions, we need to be able to explain them. So does it mean that responsible AI is explainable AI, or what's the connection there?
Yeah, so I think definitely I will deep dive into explainable AI and talk more about that. But so explainable AI is more like a post-mortem report, I would say. An incident has happened, and now, okay, what do you need to do? Okay, let's build like a simple algorithm, justify the decision. Responsible AI is more like, okay, we have these frameworks in place, and your starting point, or whenever you are building an algorithm, a project, you have all of these tools and frameworks in mind, right? So this is more of, so that the incident doesn't happen anymore, you have these tools and processes in place. So it's more of mindset, and explainable AI just gives you the authority, or I would say the tools to build those frameworks. Right. And I can deep dive into, some of the practical techniques that you can use to implement explainable AI in your day-to-day projects.
Okay. So what you're saying is we should try to prevent these situations, like the example when husband and wife got different credit proposals, right? Different loans. So ideally, we should not let this even happen. So we should catch all the bias we have in our data and try to mitigate it before we train our credit scoring system, right? And then when the credit scoring system is live, then we should be able to justify. So if the wife in this case comes to the financial institution and asks, why did you give me lower loan? Like the bank would just say, okay, this and this is the reason, right? Other reasons. And then but if we don't have that, then we have a problem, right?
Yeah.
So how do we? So you mentioned tools, you mentioned frameworks. So how do we do this?
Yeah. So this is where I think it's the right point where I can explain some of the explainable AI techniques, right? So what is explainable AI essentially? It's a framework that can be integrated with your existing machine learning model so that you can understand the output of your AI or ML algorithms, right? And as I said, that this is not only used to explain the results behind a machine learning algorithm, but you can use it to receive feedback so that you can retrain your model. You can use it to detect bias in your data. So it's called the glass box approach, right? As they say, oh, AI machine learning is a black box, but here it's giving you transparency and it's called the glass box.
Glass box. I heard white box, but then I was always wondering, like, is white really transparent? Is as intransparent as black, right? Glass box makes much more sense.
Yeah. So I will start with the data level, right? Like first, when we talk about the data level, we talk about the fairness and bias testing. There you have a few data quality checks that I feel every data scientist does. They do some sort of exploratory analysis, dig into the data, see what they have. There as well, right? Like we can do a few checks. One of them is skewness. You could check how your data looks like. And it could be that you are missing out on one population over the other if your data is highly skewed, right? And other could be missing data. If you have too much missing data, it's important to analyze what are you missing. And you might be able to talk to business stakeholders and get a sense, like, are we missing out on an entire population? Right. So these are like some simple checks that can be done on the data side to ensure that your data is not biased and you're covering a wide array of population. So this is one of them, right? And then on the model side, you have different techniques, but I'm just going to pause to see if there are any questions or any comments on the data side.
Well, there is a question: what tools do we use to check if there is any bias in data? And I think this is related to what you were talking about. So this is before we train a model, right? And you told you talked about EDA, exploratory data analysis. You talked about skewness analysis, missing data. Are there any particular tools and techniques that we can use for checking this?
This is more like, this is more on the EDA side, right? Like here, you are not doing anything. You're just exploring the data, honestly. You're just analyzing what's out there. What does my input look like? And then when you actually dig deep into this, yeah, I know it's kind of more of like a conscious check plus a technical check. But yeah, here, this is where you'll see, right? Like what is happening. What is happening exactly. And then I would also say that there's this bias checks, right, that you can do. Now, bias is it's a very subjective term, right? Bias can occur in a lot of shapes and forms. There's a book called Trustworthy AI. I don't know how many of you have read, where the author talks about different types of bias. And, she says that it can be like a gambler's fallacy, right? Which is that the probability of a random event, which is occurring in the future, is influenced by a past event, right? And that is what we assume when we are building AI models most of the time. Oh, that my history is the correct representation of my future. But that is not always true. And that's why you need that human touch to check for such biases in your data and in your model. So, yeah.
So basically, you need to just, as a human, as an analyst, or as a data scientist, you need to get your data set from your database, CSV file, whatever, and just spend enough time trying to understand what's happening there, right? And I guess like, should we watch out for anything particular? Like, let's say if we see columns like age and gender, should we already like think, okay, like red flag, should we do something about these columns, or how does it usually look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say it depends, right? Because age and gender and those things are very PII information, sensitive information. Most of the organizations wouldn't even let you touch that, those attributes, right? Especially if you're in a regulated industry. So I'm not sure if you would first of all even have access to that kind of information to even make this judgment, I would say. But it would be other factors, you know, it could be the income of the person, it could be the other factors about that person of whatever you are doing that can lead you to make some, I would say, assumptions, predictions, decisions, and which you check back with your business stakeholders to see if they're even valid or some subject matter expert on the data.
Okay, so you think these financial institutions we talked about, banks, they don't have access to age and gender?
I depends, right? Like which organization are we talking about? Everyone, you know, works in a different way, but like it's kind of a recommendation, right? How you are handling that PII information. Like in pharma world, we never had access to all of this data. So yeah, or even if we have it, you know, we wouldn't use it. Like we'll mask it out. So.
Yeah, but in pharma, I guess it's important, right? Because the way drugs work on people depends on their age and depends on gender, right? So
Yeah,
there it is a justified use case, right? While in risking like building a credit risk profile, maybe less so, right? And then
maybe
it should
less.
be
Again, exactly. And I don't
like
think even it's like a healthcare or a finance institution question. It's like a general industry thing. If in your use case, this type of data is not required, you wouldn't use sensitive information. Again, this is also responsible AI, right? Like because you're handling the data responsibly of a customer. So yeah, definitely. We do our due diligence, like in determining do we even need this data in the first place.
And how do we do this? Is it usually done by this? So we talked about data checks, right?
Yeah.
Like to discuss this, should we go into the model checks to understand, like, do we even need this data?
Yeah,
Or
like your
it's done
use case.
prior?
Exactly. So when you are kind of determining whatever use case you want to solve, you will have a detailed discussion with your product managers, business stakeholders, and that is where you will determine what data you need. And if it's sensitive information and if you can mask it out, that is where it will get, you know, out of your data pipeline for your AI model. So you can use other data sets. So yeah.
Well, would it be wise to completely just throw away gender data?
I mean,
Let's say if it's PII.
yeah, it'll again, you know, depend on the use.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
typical answer, but I don't think I can answer it any better. It's again, it'll depend on your use case. What do your SME say? What does your compliance say? What does your model review committee say before you decide on any of
How much of this can be automated? Like at least
the
when we talk about detecting biases in data before we come to modeling.
Yeah, I think for all the missing data, the data skewness, you can always develop DQ tools, I would say, data quality tools that can do all of these simple tests for you and tell you, you know, they can actually give you those alarms, I would say. And then you can go there and investigate if there is an alarm and you feel that an investigation is needed. So most of this can be automated.
So what about this model part?
Yes. So for model also, I think a few years back, we didn't have as many open source technologies, but now we have a lot of those, right? Like Google, IBM, everyone has come with such good open source technologies that can easily be fetched into your Python pipeline or your PySpark, whichever tool you're using. There is a what if tool by Google. It's almost an interactive tool where you can understand the data. It gives an interface of the dashboard. So you can basically like fetch in all your parameters, see what's the working behind your machine learning model, especially if you're using a TensorFlow, which is again, you know, by Google. So what if tool is a great tool to use Then we have other tools as well, like we have Skater. It's an open source Python library that was again designed so that you can see some of the model functioning. Now,
How is it called? Can you say
sorry?
it again? Say how, like the second library. I didn't hear the name.
Skater. So it's
Skater.
Skater. Yeah, Skater.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that is another tool that kind of helps you to see the functioning behind your machine learning model. Now, the trick is obviously how you will integrate in your use case will again depend on what you're trying to achieve, right? You might not find all of these tools which can be integrated with your use case. So there it's more of a exploration again. And then there's another one, AIX 360 by IBM. And that is another amazing source, open source toolkit, which you can use to comprehend your predictions and your machine learning model.
So this one is, so I'm just trying to understand. So what if, to me, if I understood it correctly, this is, you can see this as another exploratory data analysis tool, but smarter than the usual analytics, right? So it's smarter than just counting, missing values. And then you can see, like what kind of questions you can ask it. What if I remove this column, or what if I had this data, or what kind of what if questions can you ask it?
Again, right, it's more like if you want to also see like the importance of some of the features, if you want to see, okay, what if I remove this feature, again, like how will my model get impacted? If you just want to see how your data looks like as I said, like the skewness and everything, it'll easily allow you to do a plot, and that will be very dynamic. You can do it over time, over months, over years, whatever use case you have in hand. So all of those things. Right. And if you were using TensorFlow, then how did you arrive at that prediction? Right. What if you remove the feature? How will it impact your model? How will it impact your accuracy? So all of those things.
And then the scatter, like, does it do something similar to that?
It's similar, but it's not just tensor, more broad. It's more on other models if you want to use. And it's basically, you can do it based on your complete data set. So it's always explainable AI whenever you are you're using any framework, right? Like the idea of that is that if I were to apply this on a larger data set, how will the impact look like, right? But whenever you build an explainable AI technique, you basically take a small data set. And that obviously there's an assumption that this is a true representation of my bigger data set. And then you build around that. So Skater will facilitate some of those techniques for you.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one you mentioned is AIX 360 from IBM, right? So this is, my understanding was that it's used for interpreting the output, the predictions of the models, or not only?
Yeah, and actually all of these can be used, right, for that. I mean, ultimately you're using all of this. It's just that if you're not using TensorFlow, if you're using other open source packages, they'll help you facilitate that.
Mm-hmm. I've heard about tools like Lime and Shapely values, and are these somehow related to that too?
So I mean, these are the ones that I just spoke about are more of open source Python packages, I would say. Now, if you actually want to build things, right, like from scratch, the way you'll actually build any algorithm. So that's where kind of Lime comes into play. Lime, and then Lime is also, I would say it's a combination of different techniques, right? Like you can do a linear regression model, or you can do a decision tree model. And that is basically a building a line model. You might be doing a neural network model, but now you just want to be able to interpret that. So you again take a small data set and build a decision tree on that to come close to what the interpretations would look like, so that you're able to explain it to your stakeholders. So yes, Lime is very similar to that.
And then I'm wondering, so I'm quite interested in this. So let's say there are some features that we shouldn't use because they are PII, personally identifiable information, like gender, age. But in some cases, I kind of wish we could use them. So for example, in advertisement, maybe there is a product that would be more appealing to females than males. And then like how can I, if I decide to be responsible and trustworthy, then I should remove this feature, right? But I know that this feature is actually important if I want to be profitable. And then I have a dilemma, right? So do I want to be profitable? Do I want to make money? Or do I want to be responsible and remove bias from data? Like, do I want to get rich exploiting these biases or not? Right? So how can we still be profitable, but without exploiting all these biases?
Yeah. And I don't think, all these decisions are not by one person, and definitely they are not by data science practitioners. And that is what responsible AI is, right? It's a very collaborative process. That's why they say it, because when you kind of have 10 different people in a room discussing such use cases and having 10 different perspectives, you will be able to come up, I would say you'll be able to meet halfway, right? And that is where you'll be able to decide the priorities of what you really want to do and how you can achieve it. And that is exactly what we aim to do. It's beyond these techniques that I just mentioned. Yeah. So yes.
But then I guess for this one, let's say if there are 10 people who has different perspective, they should be different people, right? So it's not like all data scientists, all white males, right? So then they probably would think, okay, like there's nothing wrong in using gender, let's just use it, right?
No, definitely. I meant like different representation from different groups, because data scientists think differently, right? And project managers will think differently. Now you add compliance people, they'll think differently. So that's what, and that is why like launching an AI product and doing all of this responsibly is definitely it's a journey.
Yeah, because the reason I'm mentioning this is in many courses, and also the courses we do at DataTalks.Club, there are data sets, there are some problems where we do actually use age and gender. Like, for example, I think actually in the course we have right now, there are 2 projects in which we use age and gender, right? And then, like, you might think as a data scientist, oh, there's nothing wrong, right? So what to talk about here? Well, let's just use this, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we would never know. Like for us, it's like it's all about features. So this is important because that's what our algorithm is saying. Okay, we don't really think in that direction. So yeah, but yeah, it's important. That is.
So what kind of people we need to have in this room to be able to have this fruitful discussion? So you said we need to have perhaps data scientists, analysts, and people from compliance. Who else we should
Your
have there?
SMEs, your subject matter experts who understand the data better. Then you can have your and your senior leadership, right? Ultimately, as well. So yeah, and I think obviously it's not that it's gonna be it's easy and you can get an answer in one meeting and oh yeah we decide to come at a conclusion. I think at that time you'll be thinking about some innovative workarounds, right? Okay, let's use this one feature over this feature and let's see how it performs. Let's drop this feature. But at the end of the day, it's possible that the use case that you have in hand, like gender is one of the most important feature, right? And then again, it's a company's decision to make.
And then I guess like who is making this decision? Is it senior leadership or
Again, collaboratively.
everyone? But then if everyone is responsible, then nobody is, right?
I don't think so. I think those discussions are very productive. And obviously, everyone's responsible. But at the same time, you're in a business and you want to make money.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then at the end, what happens, I guess, you come up with some sort of terms of service. And then you say, okay, this is the data we collect. We collect gender. And if you don't agree with this, you don't use the app, or how does it usually work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like it's also about kind of, I think the way we do those declarations and the way we sign all the terms and agreements, where somewhere the customer kind of might give you the consent that, okay, yeah, just, use my data. And some customers might not give you the consent. So that's also very important component.
But I'm still thinking about that case that example where the wife and the husband, perhaps both of them gave consent to using their gender information. And then at the end, this is what happened. So the company still got sued. right? Even though they had probably paperwork in place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, like, obviously I read it in a newspaper, so I don't know, whether the company was able to justify that decision or not, because we obviously get the news, it's from a third party, right? So you don't really know the facts, but that's what kind of it made me think that, was it able to justify, right? Like if the consumer is questioning you, are you able to justify, okay, what led to this difference in decision making? And can you say that it was beyond gender? Can you say it was not bias, right? That you can only say if you've already done your due diligence before. See that there's no bias in your data set.
And if you found out that there is actually bias in your data set and somebody's already suing you, that's too late, right?
Yeah, exactly.
See.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we should have is, per my understanding, so we should analyze our data, right? So we should have a human who actually goes through the data set. Some things could be automated, right? But then at the end, a human should actually go through this and do some analytics, right? Then after that, there are techniques that can automate this, like all these what if tools and similar, like, was it Scatter, right? Skater, yeah. And then like all these other tools. So that should be used by, I guess, analysts and data scientists to make sure that this actually doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then also at the end, we want to be profitable, but at the same time, we want to be trustworthy and responsible. So then we should have this meeting with people from compliance, from data analytics, from subject matter experts, from senior leadership, who get together and discuss the case. Right? Am I missing anything?
No. And I think like we also kind of highlighted the challenges on the way, right? Like this is one of the challenge, as you said, like profitability versus being responsible. And then we have accuracy versus interpretability, because for all of your complex models, you still might not be able to make an explainable AI model, right? So all of those are, I feel like, still the challenges and pitfalls of explainable AI and responsibility.
Yeah, and actually we have a question from Shivam that is exactly about that. So the question is like how to manage the trade-off between model complexity and explainability, because the complex models do not necessarily have good explainability. So how do we manage that?
Exactly, yeah, and that's again, as I said, like that's kind of one of the challenges. And in some of the use cases, and I think it's like a trade-off, right? Like as data scientists, we face other trade-off, like we have this bias versus variance trade-off. So this is one of those things where you need to again analyze what you're trying to achieve, who you're trying to target, what is your end goal, what do you want to achieve, what does your business stakeholders want to achieve. And if we were to take a step back on accuracy, will that help us in long term, right? Like, will our consumers trust in us more? And at the end of the day, you're also trying to build a brand. It might be a bank or it might be a healthcare or whatever, right? You want people to indulge with you in some in some form or another. So yeah, it's one of those crossroads, I would say.
And so if you make a decision to prefer accuracy versus explainability, you should be prepared that eventually, like somebody from senior management, like, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg, will have to talk in front of Congress and explain things, right? And if you don't want this to happen, then maybe you don't.
Hope this doesn't happen, but yes, and it's not that every time you will be choosing like, okay, let me make the most interpretable models, right? Let me make the most. So every time you are encounter a use case, your decision making will be different, and that's why it's important to not make all of these decisions at solace. Involve others.
Yeah, because I imagine that if you, let's say, use linear or logistic regression for everything, then it will be like, I don't know, not so biased, very explainable, but then accuracy could suffer, right? But then if you go with deep learning, then it's the other, like it's the opposite, the other side of the spectrum. Then you have little explainability, but a lot of accuracy. And then, so what I understand is like you just need to keep the long-term goal in mind of the company and ask ourselves, like, are we ready to sacrifice a bit of profit? I'm not like, are we ready to sacrifice our image with some extra profit? Right?
Yeah.
Is it okay if people start talking bad about us, right? Or we're an evil corporation and it's fine to, you know, store all the data about you and then sell it to others.
Yeah.
Not pointing fingers. Yeah, the question, there is a question from Raquel, is what does you need a human touch mean? I think this is related to our discussion that the first step is always like a human analyzing the data. And then the question goes on is, does this mean that responsible AI and checkpoints and alarms cannot be automated? So maybe we can think of what can be automated and what cannot.
Not be automated. Right. Yeah. As I said, right, like all your DQ checks, and you can be so creative. You can write pieces of codes and you can do all the checks in the world. But at the end of the day, you just cannot be like, oh, my DQ checks, they passed. I don't really need to, look at it and see what's happening. As your data keeps evolving, your tools and even all your production models need to get evolved, right? And often as data science, you hear, oh, we are having drift in our model. And drift can also be in this form, right? It can be in form of bias as well. You didn't have bias data before, now you have the bias data. So if you can build adoptable techniques, definitely do that. But at the end of the day, there has to be someone who can go in, analyze all of those, and you don't always have to go row by row, but in a cumulative fashion, see what's happening with your data and your model performance. So yeah, that's what I mean by human touch. But at the end of the day, it's a human who's going to write the code as well to make that happen. So
so human automates it, right? So we automate, but at the end, it's the human who is doing the automation, right?
exactly.
And then they need to put some thoughts in this process, not just blindly take a tool from, I don't know, Google or who knows what company, and just put it there and forget about this, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And to your point, like about drift, that we should monitor for bias. There is a comment that, so for example, a comment from Abhishek. So if DataTalks.Club model sees more males attending the events, females will not get recommended the event. And this can introduce a feedback loop that next time the model will recommend the events only to males, right? And we will ignore females. And then this is something like, it happens gradually. So at the beginning, maybe it's, equal, but then there is like more and more and more and more feedback loop. And then at the end, it's only males attending the events, right?
Yeah.
So are there tools that can help detect this kind of drift, that, like this kind of bias that gets into your model, into your data because of these feedback loops?
Yeah, so I feel like if your model is in production, you are already using some sort of tool to monitor your model's performance, but you might just be measuring your performance in terms of accuracy. Now, you also need to build some sort of monitoring in terms of the population samples. If it's a male or a female, if you already have a unique identifier in your data set, how is my population drifting? So basically all the DQ checks that you did at the first, during your input phase, you need to redo them even after every time, you maybe launch a version of the product or every time you're monitoring your product. So it's basically about integrating those two pieces, right? And I don't think there's like one tool that will be able to solve your problem. I feel like it will vary from your problem to problem, and then you'll get creative building. But basic statistics, I think all of us can do, right? Like mean, median, mode, like basic statistics to find out, okay, what is the mean of my data? Like how is my population? What the sample size looks like? So all of those will also give you at least a purview of what's happening, and then you can deep dive.
Because I imagine if we only monitor for accuracy, then in this example of this feedback loop, the model will maybe become 100% accurate,
And
right?
again, overfitting, even that's alarm.
Yeah, exactly. And then, okay, from this model performance point of view, it's kind of doing well, right? So like everyone who is coming enjoy the event, but then we're like maybe it has like high precision, but recall is bad, right? So we are missing out on other people who might enjoy it, but simply because the model overfit, they don't get to see this in the recommendation feed. Right? And then a way mm, to monitor this is checking these basic stats, like I don't know, looking at some demographic information
Demographic
from.
information, yes. And the way you'll actually do it for your drift also, there are these KS tools, and I mean, there are a lot of tools in the market. Even AWS, if you're using, in your notebook instance, you have these tools where you can include all these basic statistics. So whatever is the identifier for you, and that will again vary from your data, for your data. So you do need to see how that is performing over time. The way you'll monitor the accuracy, you can even monitor your data.
And yeah, so there is a similar, I probably we covered, so there's another question from Raquel, is if we're using data to train our models and identify our checkpoints and alarm, how is the data protected from human bias? And I think we answered that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we answered it by saying that we should monitor this demographic information, right? So like we should make a population sample, or maybe if we're not predicting, I don't know, for people, maybe there are some other indicators that we can monitor. So it probably varies case by case, but we should have a metric that probably indicates some sort of diversity in the sample, right?
And again, right, like that human touch part comes in. Like when someone will be analyzing those cumulative statistics and look at that data, they will be able to see that if there's a pattern, the next time they're monitoring it, they'll be easily be able to see it. And the other thing that's also important is to check the source of your data, right? Like sometimes the source that you're doing, I know that in some of the use cases, some of the organizations I was reading somewhere, they collect all of these feedback from humans. Basically, they do these surveys and then they collect that data and they do it over a larger period of time and then use that data to build the model. Now, a survey data, like what did your population look like, right? Like from that data only, you can start detecting the bias. Like the way you're even collecting the data can be questionable. So check the source as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, how did you become interested in this topic? Like, was it something you studied and then you became fascinated, or is something through practice that you realized that this is a super important topic, or how did it happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, it just happened because I was in two of the most regulated industries, and right, everything is high alarming. You have to take every step in a very thoughtful way because it impacts the lives of people and it can lead to lawsuits easily,
Mm-hmm.
I would say. So that is where it was kind of my observation and then my reading that how important it is to be cautious and responsible and how companies are evolving. And that's why it became a topic of my interest, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So for areas like finance, I guess insurance, healthcare, this is especially important, right?
Exactly. And actually, anywhere where you are dealing with like sensitive consumer information, which is being labeled as PII, it kind of becomes important. But now I would say that it's panning out to all the industries because, as people get more conscious of what they are getting and people are very brand conscious for everything, even for the clothes we buy, we are like, okay, how are they treating animals and what are they doing? And so it's just people are becoming more brand conscious now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
And then maybe like speaking again of age and gender. So like if you think about this, they are not really PII in the sense that if I tell you that this person is a female who is 35 or like who is between 30 and 40, you will not be able to locate to find where this person lives, right? So in this sense, it's not really personal identifiable information.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah, it's again subjective, right?
mhm.
This, I don't know if you've heard about, there's a tool by, I think it was by Amazon. They created this HR tool to like screen the applicants. Now there, all of this information is easily available because on the resume, people will write about, their, at least their date of births and everything. And
Yeah, they shouldn't probably.
yeah, they kind of observed, right, that for all the physically demanding jobs, like the algorithm was just selecting males, like it was ignoring females. Again, the bias, right? Because data was so biased. The historical data was all male, so it assumed. So again, right, in some of such use cases, you require all of those things because age is an appropriate factor there. Gender might be an appropriate factor there. So yeah.
Do you know how did Amazon solve this problem? What did they do?
No, so it was a tool that was developed by them, but then it was being used by other CEOs. So again, the book that I
Mhm.
was referring to, Trustworthy AI, and that is where she kind of talks about this dilemma of a CEO who's trying to select candidates for this
Mhm.
role. And how they detected it is because, she was like, why are you only giving me males to interview, right? Like, where are females? Like, from past 5 months, you haven't got a female candidate. So again, the human touch, the conscious, someone was able to question the decisions and they were able to see how the model is biased. So, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of like an ATS tracker that they use, but yeah. So I'm not sure if it was, again, don't quote me on this, if it was by Amazon or some other company that built it.
Okay. I've seen a tool mentioned, something like FairLearn. So you talked about this AIF 360, right?
Yeah,
And then the Abhishek mentions another tool, FairLearn. Do you know what this tool is?
I probably haven't used, but I'll check it out. What is it?
FairLearn? I guess it's like scikit-learn, but instead of scikit, it's fair.
Oh, okay.
I
Nice.
think. I assume it's something similar to. I personally haven't used this tool. Um, yeah, probably something similar to scikit-learn. At least the name suggests that it's probably something for fairness.
Yeah.
And how, like, since we talk about fairness, I think we spent quite a lot of time talking about fairness.
Yeah.
Like, how is this related to, reliable machine learning? Like, why does a reliable model have always be fair? And the other way around, like, if a model is fair, is it always reliable?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, again, yeah, that's a kind of a very thoughtful question, right? Like, do all my models need to be fair? Comes down to what is the use case that we're trying to solve. If I'm trying to send someone personalized recommendations, do I want to exclude a population? Do I want to, excluding a population also kind of has some effects, right? Because you might be excluding again some of your potential customers that were ready to engage with you, but just because your model was not fair enough, you just secluded a population and you secluded some potential customers. So it's about that. The other thing is, again, it's also about the happiness of your users, right? Like, again, in a same family, there might be different people indulging with your product. One is receiving something, the other is not. Obviously, everyone's not going to put a lawsuit against you, but it's unhappy
Some
customers.
might,
Some might,
right?
some might,
So you
but
don't
some
want to risk that, right?
might.
Uh, yeah, there is Abhishek, who is writing a lot of comments, probably is also into this topic. So what he wrote is that there is a cool paper titled "What Would an Avenger Do?" Do you know this paper?
No, I haven't read that paper.
I'm I'm really curious what it is, but maybe we can check it after the
Exactly, that's what
podcast
I'm
episode and
suggesting.
then see what is there. But there are people saying that this is a nice paper. The title is amazing. I hope it's not like this uh, never going to give up kind of recalling. Because like I recently somebody sent me like a recall link and then I got
Oh,
confused.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, we have quite a few questions, so maybe we can cover them too. Mm. So, do you know if there are any synthetic indicators for bias in data similar to RMSE, that is an indicator of accuracy for models? Like,
Hmm.
is there a number that can just tell us, hey, your model seems to be biased go check it?
I mean, I can tell you a number, but I feel like even if I was working on 10 use cases, that number will be different for all the 10 use cases. It'll so depend because you're obviously not using one data set to build the model. You're probably using 15, especially if you're building a production AI model. So I don't think that there's any number. There can be baselines that you can, set based on your company's data. Okay, if it goes beyond this baseline, it's an alarm, right? Based on what you observe over time. But I don't think you can set up a static number. Again, you might be getting into the same situation.
Mm-hmm. So then you still need to have this human touch, right? Like a person needs to say, hey, why are you bringing me all the male candidates where are females, right? So somebody still needs to raise this question and say, hey, what's going on, right? And then, so there's no, like, it's not possible to remove the human touch at all, right? It's like the human has to be in this process always.
I mean, we don't know where technology is heading to,
Yeah, but right now. There is another point that in the age of AutoML, like when you just get a data, you throw in the black box, and then it gives back like a good model, and then you just can go and use it. Like when it becomes so simple to train a model, even for people who are maybe not data scientists, right? So you can just go and train a model. Like how can we still be cautious about this and not completely, put a lot of trust in the model?
But again, I feel like even interpretability, these explainable AI tools, I mean, that might not be a priority of everyone, right? It's a priority of some industries. So again, what's your company's goal, right? You might be just fine with developing one of the most wonderful and accurate AI algorithm, and you just might be happy with that. You might not care about interpretability, and that's where it comes, like this versus that. So yeah, it's an answer that you have to do. But I feel even in auto ML, you might giving your input data, but you still have some power over the data. You can still explore that and see what's there. Just blindly just inserting it in the algorithm.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us about the DataBuzz community? What it is? How did you start it?
Yeah, of course. DataBuzz, as I said, like I'm from a non-computer science background, and I have had some kind of unique challenges to get into this field. Being from a non-coding background, being able to justify that I can be a data scientist, and exploring other realms of data science. Because for people, it might be like, oh, there's a data scientist. No, there's a data strategist. There's an AI consultant. There's an ML ops engineer. And there's so many things you can do with your unique skill set. And especially if you are pivoting from a business and kind of like a business plus a science field, there is something unique that you have to offer. So DataBuzz basically its goal is to mentor those people, engage those people, and also there's so much to learn. So I am an avid reader. So whenever I see something cool, like I try to post it on my page so that my community can benefit, or any cool resource that will help you upskill is posted on my LinkedIn page. So you can follow that, and I also provide one-on-one consultations for free, and I connect you with my large network of people that I have from the past 5 years. If they can help you to pivot where you would like to pivot.
You've been doing this for 5 years. That's amazing.
No, so actually I started I was doing it unofficially for, a lot of years, but now I started this community in the starting of this year because I felt, okay, now I can, officially do this. So.
Yeah, and so you said that it's not just data scientists, there are so many data roles. And like I also get quite often requests like, okay, I'm doing X, how can I become a data scientist?
Yeah.
And this X usually varies from, I don't know, baristas to software engineers.
Yeah.
And then, so first I guess the what you need to explain to people is it's not just data science, right? And my question is, like, what is out there in addition to data? You mentioned a few roles, but like, what are the typical roles that people can look at?
I think first of all, the question to ask is like, what is my skill set and what do I want to do with it, right? Like, do you actually want to be, building models. Some people are a lot into research. So these days they're becoming machine learning engineers, or they're called research scientists or applied scientists in the tech world, who actually research on the algorithm. Some people are interested in, the aftermath of my productionalizing the model, the ML ops engineer. So those might be software developers who now want to pivot in the ML field, or DevOps engineers who want to pivot. Now the other are who want to relate the business to the AI. These are the AI consultants who actually search all of these AI use cases and then pitch clients. And here you typically have like a consulting, I would say, relationship with your. And then you have these data analysts, you have business analysts. Even those are kind of a data scientist, because now you're doing all the project management and you're doing the analytics and reporting for your data science results, and even before the data science results. And then definitely you have data strategists, who are strategizing on what data you need. All of these. So yes.
And for example, a project manager, somebody who works as a project manager in, I don't know, some traditional industry, I don't know, like manufacturing or anything. So how can they select what works for them? Like, it doesn't have to be project manager, but usually like every person has unique skills, right? That, like, how do you understand if all you know is that the data scientist is like the sexiest job, and you might not know about like others?
Yeah. No, I mean that's a tough question, right? Like, even when I was trying to decide my career, I think I would have spoken to like 100+ people. I did coffee chats with people from different industries, different domains, and try to explore like, what do they actually do? You just cannot read the job description and know, okay, this is where I fit. So I feel like all these networking events, conferences, coffee chats, and engaging in such communities will probably lead you where you want to go.
And from all these roles, do everyone need to know and care about responsible AI and explainable AI?
I don't think so. I feel like all of these, bring something unique to the table. And again, if your org does care about you, you do need to add that touch. But it'll again depend from an organization to org. You might be in a startup who might say, oh, no, just, care about the profits. Just build me a most profitable AI algorithm. So it depends on.
But then I, as a data scientist, I probably have some moral duty to tell to the CTO, hey, wait a minute, like this is not how it's done, right? So you should think about reputation.
That also depends where you are in the stage of your career, right? Are you an influencer? Are you a decision maker in the decision making process, or are you just the person who executes stuff? Whatever is told to you. If someone's actually starting in the data science domain, it might be hard for them to convince people what needs to be done. But once you've established yourself, then it is your moral responsibility. Being in the industry for 3-4 years, you do everything responsibly.
But probably at least everyone who gets in the data world should perhaps study ethics or something like this.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, like I would say this is such a budding field that so many people are these days interested, even though I don't build explainable AI models, but I feel like as a person, again, as an ethical person, I feel it's my responsibility to understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Of course. Actually, at work, so if I want to have access to data, and I as a data scientist have to have access to data, right? So I need to go through a special training. And this training tells me what is good and what is not. And I think more and more companies are actually implementing this.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I can use my common sense, and then when there are quizzes, and when I need to answer these quizzes, most of the time I just use my common sense, and more often than not, the answer is correct. But it's still a good idea to tell people that, you know what, this is how it's possible to do wrong with data. And, probably
Exactly.
this is like all the data people should do this sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even when you join a firm, right, like you go through some training, like what do you do in case of emergency? And I feel like this is kind of one of the things, right? Like when you have such data, how do you deal with this and become a responsible individual? So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's the time is up. So thanks for joining us. Maybe before we finish, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to mention that maybe you forgot?
I just want to thank everyone for joining and for being so interactive, I would say. And if there was any question that was not answered, if there's something, personally you would like to discuss, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Do connect with me there. You can even look into the DataBuzz page. And all the views and everything that I spoke about today was my opinion and had nothing to do with Morgan Stanley. So that disclaimer.
That was an important part to mention, right?
So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Also, thank you everyone for joining us too, for being active, for asking all these questions. There was a very lively discussion, lovely discussion, and lively in live chat. So thanks for doing that. And I wish everyone a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.